As of today, the folks over at Marvel Studios and Sony have, if not officially announced, perhaps hinted at several updates related to the next MCU Spider-Man movie. There are talks about casting back Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man 2, and even Jamie Foxx as Electro from the Amazing Spider-Man 2 movie, suggesting a possible multiverse crossover between the Spider-Man cinematic universes we have had this century, with Tobey Maguire's and Andrew Garfield's. This wouldn't be a surprise decision given the success of the Into the Spider-Verse and Avengers Endgame movies, proving current audiences may now be able to handle more than one universe at the same time. However, as this could be considered mere speculations and rumors, even if video proof have been found and even hints on other Spider-Man related franchises like the Spider-Man villain Morbius movie, it's worth analyzing if whether or not the idea itself is a good one at this stage of the MCU. Regardless of what your feelings and thoughts about the other two Spider-Man franchises are, there's no denying they have some aspects that could be revived, or could receive a second chance at the postulation of a Spider-Man universe's crossover. Aspects some of the rumors have started to hint at by mentions of bringing back characters and actors like Kristen Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, already brought back characters like J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson, and even the mention of the involvement of Doctor Strange's new movie, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which the name itself already hints at what sort of role it'll have in this whole mayhem. Now here are some of the reasons why, should the decision of making this the third Tom Holland Spider-Man movie could result in a fiasco as crowded as the actual Spider-Man 3 or as convoluted as the multiple subplots cramming of Amazing Spider-Man 2. Where we're at with the MCU Spider-Man. I'm going to straight up say it. I'm not a big fan of any of the live-action Spider-Man interpretations. Yes, I meant live action. Insomniac's Spider-Man game and Sony Animation's Into the Spider-Verse are exempt as they are proof of how to really adapt the source material. I have grown with the Sam Raimi trilogy and love what it makes me feel every time I watch it, and how pioneering it was for superhero movies. But there are so many source material inconsistencies that stem from both the era it was born in, where high schoolers look like adults, and some of the creative decisions, while they could make sense in this universe, diverted heavily from the source material. I cannot tell you how shocking the reveal that Spider-Man's webs didn't come out of his body was.
What? What the fuck?
I didn't know what to believe then. And the Andrew Garfield's duology, right? While the first, serving as a great character study on loss and other emotions, having some really good scenes and ideas, the rest of the decisions, from the design of the first suit, yuck, to the amount of plot conveniences that seemed to originate from every subplot that appeared in every turn, seemed like the wrong path to go. As hateful as these declarations may be, I do want to reiterate that I like these movies for what they are. Some might be bad Spider-Man movies, and others may be simply bad movies overall, but I truly believe adapting any idea or concept from a Spider-Man comic can result in a complete disaster, given the Spider-Man comic book universe was so well crafted, it'd be really hard to fuck it up. But anyway, what I meant to say here was that the new MCU Spider-Man movies are good. I understand Spider-Man Homecoming was a great change of pace for the seemingly similar-looking MCU movies at the time. But as good a movie as it may be, and as good at capturing the high school teen movie themes it is, this movie is a freaking pain to watch as a Spider-Man fan. Some decisions are flawless, like the Tom Holland Spider-Man, the interpretation of the Vulture, and the whole high school dynamic. But others are, while serving well the movie, completely radical and confusing, mostly stemming from the fact that they belong to a bigger universe that is the MCU. So cameos and meddling of MCU characters are always in the way, and that's my whole point. I love that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is part of the MCU, and that in this version, he looks up to Tony Stark. But man, sometimes it seems that I don't know anything about this new Spider-Man. The only moment I get to see a bit of character development is in Far From Home, which I completely love and which I believe is way better than Homecoming. I praise the work done in Homecoming. Heck, even in all the other Spider-Man movies. It's not an easy character and world to adapt. But before you break the focus between other cameos of Spider-Man and team up Tom Holland's Spider-Man again for the 5th time, why don't you allow the character to develop a bit more? If not him, perhaps other supporting as yet important characters to Peter, like Aunt May, Michelle Jones, and perhaps, I don't know, maybe Uncle Ben? Why is the new franchise so obsessed with ignoring the presence of Uncle Ben? This for me is the biggest sin of this new franchise. I don't need you to kill him again, but given he's the reason he becomes Spider-Man, well, it kinda seems important to me that he's somehow there. But that's a topic for another conversation. The upcoming headache that will be the new face of the MCU. With shows being created in Disney Plus and movies being released, we're heading towards a path that might ruin the MCU as we know it.
Nah.
I am glad Endgame was a success and tied up the Infinity Saga so nicely, because now, whatever happens to the new MCU movies and shows, I won't mind, because I have this saga to look back on, sort of how I emotionally shield myself from getting hurt from new Star Wars movies. As long as I have the original trilogy, I know they can do whatever they want, because I can always choose to ignore it. It would have been completely fine if they did only the shows, or if they kept only making the movies. But doing both will drive people crazy. Not to mention, it would compel people to get Disney Plus subscriptions, and perhaps others, depending on how they do it. When it was announced that WandaVision, Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and several other new Marvel shows were on their way, it was hard not to let out an exasperated sigh, especially when it was announced that we need to watch them to understand upcoming blockbusters like Doctor Strange 2, which will be important to understand the events in Spider-Man 3. This is what I mean. It's one thing to watch a couple of movies and see it being connected to other movies and seeing it build up little by little, but having to follow both TV shows and movies with all their episodes to keep up with the threats might be too much to ask the audience, especially casual Marvel fans.
We are going to die!
What this would mean for other franchises and the future of the MCU. It's all fun and games. Fans have preferences, and many people like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man interpretation, and others are die-hard fans of Mark Webb's Amazing Spider-Man. There's no denying a lot of good was done in both these franchises, from character interpretations, costume and villains designs, to plot and cinematic experiences. But the inclusion of these universes as part of the MCU, what would it mean for the future? Where are we going to have more Sam Raimi and Mark Webb movies with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield? Why are we so concerned with meddling with the past instead of creating new stories? This has happened already with the new Star Wars trilogy, as witnessed in The Rise of Skywalker, and even in the DC universe with the TV shows, where cameos of past Supermans and Batmans have appeared, although briefly, in the story. Hopefully they did turn out welcomed and harmless references. But what will happen when by digging the past, some things get ruined? All I'm saying is, just like there are upsides to bringing back past characters, there are also downsides in terms of story continuity that must be kept. Remember the Back to the Future paradox? No, not the actual paradox itself, but the one about how even if the time travel was not accurate or sound, people still loved the movie for the entertainment and sentimental value of it. So hopefully that might be just the case.
What do you think?
In conclusion, it's futile to create an opinion about this entire discussion. As of today, there are no official announcements, at least not ones that were formulated in the form of a teaser trailer or such, which for me is the ultimate official announcement, as many things can still change even if they were formally announced in conferences and such. However, regardless of whether it would turn out to be a fiasco or not, I love comic books, and so I love crossovers, especially if they are between versions of my favorite superhero. I just feel I need some more time with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, given the last movie was starting to build a superhero on its own rather than depend on the Avengers. Also, a really world-wrecking cliffhanger was left undealt, and a new status quo was created in the last movie, so it's not like the seeds for a Spider-Man movie of its own weren't there from the start. So let's just hope the folks at Marvel and Sony know what they're doing.